the first thing that you do when you're creating an invention or building a prototype is to think. To think through all the moves so that you know exactly how you're going to cut and why. And a good way to approach that process is to make a list of the things that have to be defined. And of course, this concept is cutting a cover out of acrylic on both sides that has channels cut in it, 3 big channels that have that shape. This is the mouthpiece, and then it gets progressively higher as you approach the back cover. So these would be large arches over 1/2 inch, and then going to rather small in this area. Okay, and why? Because it'll improve the tone a lot. I've done testing on it, and these are called KETTLEWELL resonant covers. Can't be patented because I gave it away to the public domain. Okay, nobody can patent it. Okay, let's make a list of the things we got to figure out. Number 1 is, what is the shape at the top? The shape of the covers at the ends. The shape at the mouthpiece, which is equivalent to this part here on these covers. So shape at mouthpiece. And of course the shape at the ends would include the screw approaches. I'm probably going to use O-rings to make sure I don't crack the acrylic. O-rings around the screws. And number 4 is the cut of the channel itself. That's the resonant channel. And then the other is the shape of the covers at the back of the harmonica, this shape, what's it going to be looking like here, which includes what I'll call an indent, which means that I'm probably, after I cut the channels, I'm going to come in and bring them in about 1/8 of an inch so that there's an outer cover. And then it goes in a little bit, just thing. And then I have the issue to deal with of the stanchions, which in this case could either be the end of the channels, you know, it could be that, or I could bring them up 1/8 of an inch and it wouldn't touch the harmonica at all. But it is a very difficult thing, believe it or not, to shape something and to have those stanchions come down between the reeds and clear the wind savers too. So I'd say I better add on the wind saver clearance, because you'd be surprised when you go to cut weird covers, problems you can get into with breast savers. Now the good news is the ones that are exposed here actually flip up at the back. And so it's, and this will be at the high point, but that means that the curvature can't be like that, you know, on the channels at the back. They have to be straighter so that the breast saver can lift up perhaps 1/8 of an inch or more. And then there's also little things like, you know, cosmetics. Am I going to go for a shiny cover shape like this, or am I going to go for one that's sanded? These are going to be done by hand with a Dremel tool and a grinding stone on it. Where'd this come from? This was the base for that. I just smacked it off with a hammer this morning. and I'll cut the other one just like it. I'll need 2 from this chunk here. I'll do that probably with a bandsaw. I might make a video of that. So I also have another minor issue, which is the slider. My harmonica has a slider that I made. And this slider, KETTLEWELL frictionless mouthpiece slider, was designed to fit onto the mouthpiece, and I got to make sure I clear it. But if I can't, I'll just sand off the bottom portion, but it's a minor issue. And this has a KETTLEWELL ergo button, so it's not going to get in the way because the button clears the cover by quite a bit. So, gosh, there's an awful lot of things to think through. And as far as process goes, let's flip it down and you can kind of look at what I'm looking at here. There's that. So, one question is this cut going to do me a lot of good here? And I would probably rather just slice that off and build the shape from a rectangle and not have to take into consideration that, because, you know, it might, I don't think it'd be a problem, but I just don't want to be limited by this, and it's going to have to get cut off anyway, or the bottom's going to have to get cut off. Which brings out another point. Do I want these covers to extend beyond the end of the harp? And I do, and the reason is it's too small a footprint. I want the harmonica bigger, and I also want it deeper. So I'm going to, just for fun, add on 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch on the back. And if I don't like what's going on, I'll just grind it down and remove it, because you can always take off more, but you can't go back and take off less than you've already taken. So these are going to be made in such a way that they're going to extend about that much further. Or maybe less. But again, that's an easy thing for me to do, or it might be, if I had to guess, that'll be the real overhang like that. So it's going to make a bigger harp. It's going to be bigger to the hand by quite a bit. It's going to be like big, like a Hohner CX12, right around there, which is a nice resonance chamber for a harmonica. This is aged acrylic, and it's a good material to cut. It cuts nicely. The shape of the actual channel, it'll come up and kind of like that. Okay. Those are the 3 channels, see? It'll be cut. The back here. Each of those will go down to a smaller area at the back. And so it'll be, you know, they start off at the back quite high, all the way up here, see, but by the time we get to the harp, which is that line, it's going to be much lower, so the shape is like that, and that will give better acoustic properties. I have another thing, which is the finishing of the inside on the chambers, so finishing chambers. Now you might say, well, why did you make this so wide? Well, the whole reed has to fire in this system, so I can't really make it like a true trumpet, like a V, because this back part has to be bigger. I can't take it in tighter. I'll miss some notes. So I can only get height on the chamber. You see what I mean? I can only get height. I can't get width. Width will have to be a constant, but the height I can get. And of course, this will be a shape which is kind of probably like a half circle, but maybe elongated a little bit more the way that you do with a flugelhorn, which will give a shape. So in other words, I'm not looking for necessarily a true exact half circle. I might want something that's a little bit higher than a circle. But of course I can make this out of that, but once I've cut this, I can't go back to that. And I certainly do not want to start cutting these a second time. So anyhow, that's kind of so that, you know, this is the early stage thinking on this project. The nice part about, you know, the other thing I got to be careful of, I'm going to make a note of this, is I don't want the screws busting. So side screws have to no break. In other words, when I drill the holes here, I don't want this thing cracking on me. And that means I'm probably not going to do a shape like a normal cover where it goes, it's just going to come straight out. It might have a slight curvature to the side and be rounded to the hand, but I'm not going to be carving out a lot of this because that's exactly where it'll crack. I do not have to bring the end of the channels all the way to the reed plate. If I do that, it will be a little bit better acoustically, maybe, and it will have some support when you grab it and squeeze it. The other thing I have to keep in mind, by the way, is flex. In other words, once you start cutting this acrylic material, it will change shape by 10/15. It will probably curve up because there'll be a lot of material carved out of the bottom, so it'll have a tendency to go like that, only a little. So that just means that I'll have to, you know, sand a little bit here and work it on top. That's not a big deal, but it is a small deal. So anyway, if I bring the stanchions down, it's got to be very precisely cut. If I make any mistakes, I'm dead. And if they actually rise up by an eighth of an inch at the low point here, it will still have the resonant qualities. So, but if you squeeze it with your hand, you might get it to compress a little bit. These are all the trade-off things on design, but I'll think all this stuff through and probably start cutting tomorrow. I've got to get another one of these. I want 2 of them good to go because I'll do one element and then the other element on the other cover, and I'm going to build it that way instead of just doing one cover and then starting it over and doing the other cover. I don't want to do that because this way when I'm done, I'm done.